Ladies and gentlemen, there is a question that has hovered over every great leap in human history. Who, or what, will we commit our future to? When people ask, who is the future bride? They often imagine a single name, a romantic mystery to be solved. But in truth, the future bride is not a person waiting in the wings. It is the relationship we choose to build with possibility itself. Tonight, I want to take you on a journey through the human mind and the science of connection to show why the next great marriage is not between two individuals, but between our deepest human needs and the vast frontier that calls to us. Neuroscience has revealed that our brains are wired for attachment. From the moment we're born, oxytocin and dopamine create a feedback loop that rewards trust, empathy, and shared vision. These same neurochemical circuits light up when we fall in love, when we create art, and when we work together on audacious goals. Whether that's curing disease, colonizing Mars, or transforming energy on Earth, the future bride is that circuitry seeking a worthy partner, a purpose big enough to fire every synapse of hope and courage. Consider how every monumental step in civilization was preceded by a similar leap of faith. The Polynesian navigators, who sailed thousands of miles across the Pacific, guided only by stars and memory, weren't marrying an island. They were marrying the unknown. The scientists of the Enlightenment weren't wedding data. They were pledging themselves to curiosity itself. And today, as we stand at the threshold of multi-planetary life and bio-digital evolution, our bride is the cosmos, our vows written in code, biology, and the quiet resolve of billions. As a neuroscientist might explain, commitment is a contract between our prefrontal cortex, the seat of planning and reason, and our limbic system, where emotion and instinct reside. When those regions align, we experience what psychologists call integrated motivation, the most powerful driver of sustained action. Think of the engineers pulling all-nighters to perfect a reusable rocket stage. Think of the medical researchers decoding the brain's immune responses to regenerate damaged tissue. They are not merely employees. They are partners in a sacred union with the future. But no marriage is without challenge. The amygdala, our ancient alarm center, whispers fears of failure and loss. It tells us to cling to what we know, to stay earthbound, to protect the familiar. History shows that every time humanity has hesitated, whether out of fear of the sea, fear of the sky, or fear of the atom, we risk stagnation. The future bride waits patiently, but she will not wait forever. Opportunities expire, resources deplete, windows close. Real life stories illuminate this truth. I once visited a lab where a young researcher was using brain-computer interfaces to help paralyzed patients move robotic limbs by thought alone. When asked why he worked 16-hour days, he didn't talk about money or fame. He said, "Because I promised a patient she'd dance at her daughter's wedding. That is what commitment looks like." That is a vow to the future. On a planetary scale, our collective vows must be just as profound. Climate change is the fidelity test of our era. To keep the planet habitable, we must honor our pact with the biosphere, transitioning to sustainable energy and regenerative systems. Each breakthrough, solar arrays that mimic photosynthesis, batteries that store days of sunlight, rockets that refuel in orbit, is a step down the aisle toward a livable tomorrow. Space exploration adds another layer to this metaphor. When we talk about colonizing Mars, we are talking about survival, yes, but also about romance in the grandest sense. The red planet represents both escape and embrace, escape from existential threats, and embrace of the infinite. Imagine the first child born under a salmon-colored sky, looking back at Earth as a distant blue star. That child is the living embodiment of our marriage to possibility. And yet, none of this matters if we forget the most intimate form of partnership, our connection to one another. Advances in neuroscience reveal that empathy is not a soft virtue, but a hardwired requirement for innovation. Teams that cultivate psychological safety, where every member feels heard and valued, produce more patents, more discoveries, more resilient solutions. The future bride demands that we not only dream boldly, but care deeply. So tonight, when you hear the phrase, "Who is the future bride?" I invite you to see beyond gossip or speculation. See instead the intricate neural dance of ambition and affection, the covenant between our species and its destiny. Each of us is both the suitor and the beloved, the scientist and the poet, the explorer and the hearth keeper. Our vows are written not in a chapel, but in the stars, in data streams, in the quiet pulse of a heart that longs to create. This is roughly the first quarter of the full piece. If you'd like me to continue, just say the word, and I'll pick up exactly where I stopped, carrying the story toward the powerful, inspiring close you requested. Our journey forward begins with a simple but profound recognition: the relationship we are forging is not with cold machinery or distant planets alone, but with the very capacity of the human mind to evolve. Neuroscience teaches us that the brain is not a static organ. It is plastic, adaptive, and eager to rewire in response to challenge. Each time we choose exploration over fear, we sculpt new pathways that make future courage easier. In a sense, every bold act today is a rehearsal for the vows we will exchange with tomorrow. Think about what happens inside the brain when we face the unknown. The anterior cingulate cortex lights up as it monitors conflict and novelty, while the hippocampus works to encode fresh patterns. These regions thrive on uncertainty. They crave the kind of grand, meaningful problems that demand cooperation and imagination. Our future bride is that ever-renewing frontier, a challenge that calls forth the best version of ourselves. Consider the story of the early space pioneers, engineers who worked through nights so cold that their breath froze on the drafting tables. Many were not household names. They were parents, friends, dreamers who believed in something larger than individual acclaim. When asked what kept them going, despite repeated failures, one veteran replied, "We wanted to give humanity a chance to write a bigger love story." That sentiment echoes across generations. It is the quiet heartbeat beneath every rocket launch, every patient clinical trial, every sleepless night spent debugging code. Yet for all our technological brilliance, we cannot overlook the fragile biology that carries it. The human body is an ecosystem of 37 trillion cells, each engaged in microscopic cooperation. Our immune system negotiates with microbes, our neurons converse across synapses that are narrower than a grain of sand. When we ignore the health of this inner cosmos, when we burn out, pollute, or neglect mental well-being, we weaken the very partnership we are trying to forge. Caring for our bodies, nurturing our minds, and stewarding our environment are not distractions from progress. They are the wedding preparations without which the ceremony cannot begin. Health science offers hopeful evidence. Studies on neurogenesis show that even in adulthood, new neurons bloom in the hippocampus when we engage in learning, movement, and deep social connection. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, surges not only in romantic love, but when we collaborate, share meals, or comfort a stranger. These biological truths remind us that our destiny is communal. The future bride we speak of is not just a single vision of technological triumph. It is the collective capacity to stay empathically linked as we scale those heights. Imagine the first generation of children raised with both feet in two worlds, one on Earth and one in a settlement on Mars or another orbital habitat. Their bedtime stories will not be of dragons or distant empires, but of the day their grandparents dared to stretch the human circle wider. They will inherit the fruits of our courage and the consequences of our negligence. What vows will we pass down to them? Will we give them a narrative of reckless extraction or of careful, loving expansion? The answer depends on the partnerships we form today. Governments, private innovators, and everyday citizens must act as co-authors of a shared epic. In neuroscience, we talk about emergent properties, phenomena that arise when simple units interact in complex ways. consciousness itself may be such an emergence. Likewise, the civilization we dream of will emerge only when our individual choices, our synaptic sparks, link into a network of global intent. Every act of sustainable design, every conversation that bridges cultures, every leap of imagination is another neuron firing toward a planetary mind. Still, there will be resistance. Our ancient survival circuits are wary of change. They whisper that safety lies in the familiar, that new frontiers are dangerous. But evolution has always rewarded those who balanced caution with daring. The same dopamine surge that warns of risk also fuels the thrill of discovery. We can harness that chemistry, aligning fear and hope into a single, forward driving force. Let us not forget the intimate scale of these truths. I once met a clinician developing therapies to reverse neurodegenerative diseases. Her own father was in the late stages of Alzheimer's. When I asked how she maintained hope, she said, "Every cell I study feels like a promise I'm keeping." That is the essence of commitment, a vow made in the language of science and love alike. So when we speak of a future bride, we are really asking whether we will honor the profound interconnectedness of our minds, our bodies, our planet, and the wider cosmos. We are asking if we will pledge to knowledge without arrogance, power without domination, exploration without exploitation. It is not a contract of ownership, but of stewardship. As the horizon expands, our choices become our signatures. The spacecraft lifting off into the dark, the laboratories humming late into the night, the quiet moments when a child looks up at the stars and feels a pull she cannot name. These are the chapters of the wedding story we are writing, and like any great union, it requires more than infatuation. It demands patience, discipline, forgiveness when experiments fail, and an unshakable belief that the partnership is worth the effort. The world is watching, but more importantly, the future is listening. Generations not yet born will feel the reverberations of what we decide now. They will know whether we kept our promises to the planet, to one another, and to the boundless potential that beckons. Their verdict will not be rendered in courts or parliaments, but in the quiet arithmetic of survival and flourishing. So let us speak our vows with action. Let us design cities that breathe like forests, propel ships that leap between worlds, and cultivate societies where every child, regardless of origin, can contribute to the grand endeavor. Let us treat every sunrise as an invitation to say, "I do," once more to the adventure of being human. Because in the end, the question was never about the name of a person waiting behind a veil. The question has always been whether we are ready to love the future enough to marry it, completely, courageously, and without reservation. And the only true answer, if we dare to live it, is yes. Yes is a small word, yet it carries the weight of galaxies. Saying yes to the future means accepting both the exhilaration and the responsibility of shaping it. In neuroscience, we speak of synaptic plasticity, the ability of connections in the brain to strengthen or weaken with every thought and experience. Civilization itself mirrors this process. Every decision, each innovation embraced or ignored, each kindness extended or withheld, alters the circuitry of humanity's collective mind. Over decades and centuries, these choices determine whether we become a species defined by expansion and empathy or by contraction and fear. Saying yes also demands that we remain curious. Curiosity is not idle. It is the survival trait that propelled our ancestors across continents and oceans. It is the spark behind every medical breakthrough and engineering marvel. Modern imaging shows how curiosity lights up the reward centers of the brain, releasing dopamine much like the anticipation of love. Our future bride thrives on that chemistry. She beckons us to learn, to explore, to dismantle the comfortable walls around our assumptions. Yet, as any long partnership teaches, love is not only adventure, it is also maintenance. Our future together will be measured not merely by rockets launched or algorithms written, but by how we sustain the delicate ecosystems that give us air, water, and meaning. The climate crisis reminds us that even as we leap toward the stars, our first responsibility is to the soil beneath our feet. Sustainable energy, regenerative agriculture, and equitable resource distribution are not side quests, they are vows, promises to the living earth and to each other. There is a profound neurological truth. Here humans derive the deepest satisfaction, not from fleeting pleasure, but from purposeful effort. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi described flow, that state where challenge and skill align so perfectly that time seems to disappear. Teams designing interplanetary craft experience it. Doctors rebuilding a patient's neural pathways experience it. Parents nurturing a child's imagination experience it. Flow is love in action. It is how we keep the flame of commitment alive, year after demanding year. Think of the first settlers who might one day walk beneath the thin skies of Mars or the icy crust of Europa. They will wake each morning to conditions more hostile than any desert or tundra on Earth. Their survival will depend on cooperation at a level we can scarcely imagine today. And yet, if history is a guide, they will sing songs, tell stories, and create art. They will celebrate births and mourn losses. They will look up at a foreign sky and feel the same quiet ache that we feel when we gaze at the stars from here. That is the essence of a lasting marriage, to carry the core of our humanity into every unknown. But we must remember that exploration without introspection is hollow. Technology expands our reach, but only wisdom expands our purpose. Brain science shows that empathy and self-reflection engage overlapping networks. The medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate, regions that light up when we consider not just what is, but what ought to be. If we cultivate these capacities as diligently as we develop propulsion systems or quantum processors, we ensure that our progress is guided by compassion as well as ambition. Every generation faces a crucible. Ours is unique in that we hold tools capable of reshaping life itself. Gene editing, artificial intelligence, neural interfaces, these are not distant possibilities but present realities. They can heal or harm, liberate or enslave. The future bride will not tolerate arrogance. She demands humility, transparency, and a willingness to listen to diverse voices. True partnership means shared decision making. It means welcoming perspectives from every culture and corner of the globe. I often think of a neuroscientist I met in Kyoto who spent decades studying the subtle rhythms of brainwaves during meditation. He told me, "The universe breathes through us when we pay attention." That simple sentence captures the marriage. I am speaking of a union between action and awareness, between outward exploration and inward stillness. We need both if we are to step gracefully into what awaits. So tonight, as we stand together on this cusp, let us renew our vows, not to any one individual, but to the grand experiment of life itself. Let us pledge to protect the fragile blue world that birthed us, to nurture the minds and bodies of our fellow travelers, and to reach outward with courage and care. Let us promise to keep learning, keep questioning, keep loving in ways that surprise even ourselves. When people ask, "Who is the future bride?" the most honest answer is this: she is the endless possibility that lives in each of us and in all of us together. She is the moment when a child lifts her eyes to a night sky and feels that unmistakable tug of wonder. She is the quiet decision to choose collaboration over conflict, exploration over apathy, creation over destruction. She is the next step we take, and the one after that, and the one after that, forever. Ladies and gentlemen, the doors of tomorrow are open. The aisle stretches beyond the horizon. The music of the cosmos is already playing. It is time to walk forward hand in hand, to speak our simple vow with every action we take. The vow is one word, radiant and unshakable. The vow is yes. There is a certain stillness after the word yes, a pause in which we realize that the commitment has already begun. That stillness is not empty. It is full of potential energy, like the quiet hum of a launch pad seconds before ignition. In that space, we find the courage to accept the unknown, to admit that our destination will keep unfolding even as we arrive. Saying yes is not a final act. It is the start of countless small choices, choosing to collaborate when it would be easier to compete, to learn when it would be simpler to dismiss, to build when it would be safer to stand still. Neuroscience shows us that habits of thought carve lasting grooves in the brain. Each decision to lean toward curiosity and compassion strengthens the circuitry of a wiser civilization. We become, quite literally, the stories we repeat. The future bride we have invoked tonight is not waiting in some distant decade. She lives in every act of stewardship you take tomorrow morning, in the scientist who double-checks a data set because accuracy matters more than applause, in the engineer who designs a system to consume less energy, in the neighbor who listens without judgment. These gestures may feel small, but like individual neurons, their true power emerges in connection. Look up, even now, at the stars. They are reminders of both our insignificance and our significance. Their light left long before the first humans walked the earth. Yet here it is, entering our eyes, sparking thought, stirring imagination. That light is a message from the past and a promise to the future. It whispers that we belong to something vast and ongoing, that our brief lives can contribute to an eternal story. So let the wedding to possibility be celebrated not with grand declarations alone, but with the steady rhythm of effort. Let our vows be coded into clean energy grids, into medical breakthroughs that restore memory and movement, into art that reminds us why survival is worth the struggle. Let our rings be the orbits of satellites, carrying knowledge across the dark, the circuits of networks, uniting minds across continents. The question was never truly, who is Elon Musk's future bride, or anyone else's? The question has always been whether we, as a species, are ready to love the future enough to shape it with care. Tonight, in this gathering of hearts and minds, we have our answer. Walk out beneath the sky with that answer alive in you. Carry it into your work, your friendships, your quiet moments of reflection. Teach it to your children not as a single lesson, but as a way of being. Because the future is not a stranger to be revealed, it is a partner to be cherished. The Eisel is endless. The stars are waiting, and every step you take from this moment forward is the continuation of the vow. Yes,